30 years ago, the world was very different in the recording studio process. We had tape recorders and computers that would only deal with MIDI. There was no such thing as something that could record lots and lots of audio, not like we've got nowadays. So, in today's recording session, every piece of kit that I'm going to use was built in the 20th century. Let's take a look. Here we are then with the Atari ST. On your screen you can see the display. It's slightly flickery, it's an old display, bless its heart, and it's black and white. No pretty pictures here. Now I've got my piano here, which is actually connected via MIDI into the Atari Direct. This was rather an astute move on the manufacturer's part to build in MIDI in and out ports. Really smart. Out of the computer comes another MIDI cable which goes to my sound module, which is in the rack there. You can see on the other display there's an old Roland multi-timbral sound module. Now what that means is that you can send any 16 channels on MIDI and to control various sounds, and it's all mixed in the box. At the moment on the display you can see that track 10 is highlighted. That is the drums. So I'm going to start recording, so I'm going to go back to the beginning. You can hear this familiar peep. Those of you who have used Ataris in the past will get a nostalgia trip when I press record because of the metronome sound. So I'm going to go from the beginning, and here we go. There's my drum track recorded. On the display you can see a tiny little black sort of blob which is actually the drum sounds. Now in order to go into that I need to highlight it. I need to go to edit and go to the key editor. Now that shows me a rather familiar looking display, albeit it's all black and white. So I need to select all of these parts now. So I'm going to go to edit and select all, which is Control and A. It's all still the same key commands, and I need to quantize these. So I'm going to press Q, and then all of the notes move to the nearest semiquaver or 16th note. You can see that here, snap 16 and quantize of 16. So I'm going to keep that one. Sometimes the mouse button requires a couple of presses to make it work. It just brings a sense of fun into the occasion. Now I'm going to go and find another track and record something else. On the multi-sound module that I've got there, you can see that different meters are moving according to the channel that I'm setting on the computer. So all of the control of the sounds is done via the computer remotely to the audio sound module. Kind of a bassy-ish sound. There we go. Of course, you can edit all of the sounds on the sound module. I'm not going to do that. Really, today is about showing you how this Atari works, and also I'm going to introduce something else at the end which allows me to record vocals. Don't forget, you can't do it on the Atari, but there are other ways. So, I'm going to press record and record the bass line. So there is the same black highlighted track again. I'm going to go to the key editor, just check that I was a little bit better with my timing there, but actually I'm going to still select everything. There we go, select all and Q for quantize. There we go. You can hear the familiar beep from the display every time it does that. So it's actually quite useful having a metronome coming out of the monitor. You don't need to program it anywhere else or anything like that. And of course you can switch it off if you like with the little click button that's showing down on the bottom right. So let's have some piano. Defaults to track 1, or MIDI channel 1. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so there's our MIDI piano. Go in and have a little look at that. Now, I don't think I did any spread chords because you don't want to quantize something if you've done that sort of thing. But actually, I am going to go in and just select all and quantize that. There we go. Letter Q again. Q for quantize. On modern computers, the W key is worn out from web addresses, but on an Atari, it's the letter Q. So, just going back to the beginning, I'm just going to keep that. We've now got something. Okay, now we have left and right locators, so by default it will record between those two locators. Just something to get used to. So if you wanted to actually move your locator, you could do that by just pressing with the right mouse button, and it sort of goes off the scale. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move everything. Now, I'm ready to record a few vocals. So that is basically what happens when you are multi-tracking on an Atari. You're not doing any audio, you're simply recording on various MIDI channels that play back through the sound module. All the mixing is done on board the sound module, so I've just got a pair of inputs coming back on my desk. The sounds are pretty good. That's the Roland SC880 from round about 1997. So, you know, end of the 20th century. So it's a mere whippersnapper compared with the Atari. So I'm going to select all. There we go. And I'm going to copy. And then I'm going to go to the bar 5. And I'm going to paste. So that I've got a nice, just a looped backing track so that I can record some vocals. Now, this microphone, look at the state of that. This is 20th century as well, running into a 20th century mixing desk, which then runs into a 20th century hard disk recorder. Now, how's this going to work? Well, I'm just going to drag the phone away from the camera away from here, and I'm going to just home in on this. Now, at the moment, the Atari is outputting MIDI data to the sound module, but it can also output another type of MIDI data, and that is MIDI time code. We need to tell the Atari that it is going to be the one that controls this hard disk machine. So I'm just going to go and click master and sync, but I also need to go into synchronization, and I need to send MIDI time code. So I just need to send it to the Atari, which means the Atari MIDI output. Now, what happens when I press play now is that the display of the hard disk machine will follow the display of the Atari. So, I'm going to make channel 1 ready to record. Now, just before we start, there was a delay between the hard disk machine starting, or rather between the Atari starting and the hard disk machine chasing it. Well, of course, it's got to work out where things are before they can lock together. Now, I'm a bit old school with this because actually I started at bar 1. But actually I should start at bar 3 or maybe even bar 5. So what I'm going to do actually is to move everything along. There we go. So I've just got to also check that using the arrow here I can set the zoom. There we go. So everything does start at bar 5. So you can see I've managed to zoom in on the display there. What this means is that I can then have a bit of blank space that the hard disk machine can catch up. So I'm going to make ready record channel 1. 1, 2, 2. There we go. There's my mic. And I'm going to press go on the Atari and then make sure the machine is in record ready for me to go. Oh, this is a recording, oh yeah, made on the hard disk machine, chasing the Atari via MIDI time code. Okay, now as you can hear, that bad vocal take went with the Atari timing. Let's see if it works on playback. Well, of course, we're going to go back to the beginning and press play, and it should all line up. Okay, so that worked. Actually, I've had a slight problem in that I didn't play that vocal track back. So I'm just going to go forward a little bit with the Atari. Hopefully the machine will catch up. Oh, this is a recording. Oh yeah, made on the hardest machine, hardest machine. So this is how it all worked. Sort of 30 odd years ago, or really 25 years ago now. Before that, you could still record audio with the hard disk, with the Atari, playing all the MIDI tracks, but you needed SMPTE timecode and other bits of kit that would allow you to actually use an analog, a reel-to-reel tape machine with the Atari. Now, I do have a reel-to-reel machine and a uniter, but I can't seem to get the SMPTE code to work properly. So it was quite a fragile system. You needed good kit to make this work. But there is a session just using the Atari and a hard disk machine. There's no digital audio workstation involved whatsoever. This is how it sort of was. Now, when we finished with this, well, what are you going to do with it? You can't do anything. You can't burn a CD on the Atari. The Atari didn't have anything like that. Now, you could of course burn to a CD recorder, or to record to the record to a modern computer, or you could do this. We could record to this. So what I'd do is set up my channel, set up my mixing desk, and press record on this, and then press play on the computer. Oh, this is a recording. Oh yeah, made on the hardest machine, chasing the Atari via MIDi time code. And there we are. So now that recording will play back from the reel-to-reel machine. Oh. And that's how it's done. So you then take your master recording from the reel-to-reel machine, you take the tape off, you put it in a box, you take a courier across London to your mastering facility where you'd put the tape on the machine, and then you create your vinyl master from that. So there we are. There is a little session with the Atari ST computer, the veritable Atari, and as you can hear, mine still works perfectly, and it's a third of a century old.